Today's talk is called From Pilot to Practice, Building an AI-Ready Institution. First, to kind of introduce our webinar series team by Lecturio. So there's an entire team that's working tirelessly behind the scenes to make these webinars a reality and to bring them closer to you. I would like to specifically thank my colleague Sarah Haidar, who is behind the scenes here today. So the webinar is hosted by Lecturio, and if you are interested in learning more about our educational platform, please feel free to book a meeting with one of our partnership team to see how we can support your teaching and curriculum by scanning the QR code. Or if you have any specific questions about the platform or about what we do here at Lecturio, feel free to contact us. You can contact me personally as well. My name is Goran Stevanovsky, and I will be your host today. It is my great pleasure to announce our guest speaker for the day, Dr. Jamie Fairclough, who's the Director in Faculty Engineering and Medicine at Dartmouth, and an AI research engineer and biomedical data scientist. So I'm very much looking forward to this talk, and I'm very happy to have been able to host it today. So I will stop sharing my screen here for a second, and Dr. Fairclough, I am handing the baton over to you to share your screen and to start this talk today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. So I'm going to share my screen with you and then we can get started. Okay, welcome everyone. As the facilitator mentioned, my name is Jamie Fairclough and I'm with Dartmouth College. And I've spent the latter several years actually working at the intersection of AI, institutional strategy, health professions, more so from a systems engineering perspective. So I want to start by essentially talking about the gaps between what individual faculty know about AI and what's happening at their institutions and what they are actually doing, what's been built to support it, and just basically helping everyone gain an understanding of the questions that should be asked and then what do you do with those questions once you have them. So there is a gap, of course, between experiment and strategy. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll have a really solid lens for assessing where your institution stands across four different dimensions and a clear picture of maybe moving from pilot to practice. So what are some strategies to get your institution AI ready? So, before we really jump into the content, I want you to think about a question that everyone, regardless of your role at your institution, should know how to answer. One, where is your institution currently on AI integration? So, thinking about what actually exists right now, not just I know the strategies, I know the policy, I know there's a document, but more so the operational reality. Do you know how to state that accurately, particularly for senior leaders, deans and senior deans? How do you state what your institution and where your institution is currently when it comes to integration? Do you have a coherent direction? Are faculty essentially experimenting on their own? And not just faculty, but students are also implementing AI, regardless of or whether there are policies or not. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But are faculty trying to figure it out, or do they have actual guidance? Is there a champion at your institution that faculty can go to? Or is there a committee, perhaps? So we'll talk through those a few of those things shortly. And then are those policies clear? If you have them, who developed them? Were students involved in developing them? Are people just figuring it out as they go? What's actually happening? Can you adequately describe that across your college or your school or even your broader institution? So just think about that because that will kind of shape what you do next. So the biggest barriers to adoption that I'm seeing, and or scaling, because institutions are at different places. There are institutions who may be very resource intense that have not yet adopted AI, whereas there are other institutions that are smaller that you would think may have not adopted AI. They already have, and now they're looking to scale. So the size of the institution, the amount of resources available does not determine where people are or where a particular institution is at. So what are the biggest barriers for your institution, regardless of where you're at today? Is it faculty capacity? Do you have, I've heard data scientists, we don't have data scientists, or perhaps our IT department isn't fully aware of how to support our AI initiatives. Do you need time? Faculty time is limited, staff as well. Want to be respectful and mindful of some staff that may be on the call today. So is there capacity? Is there time? Are there compliance gaps, governance gaps, unclear priorities, or unclear vision? Is there an alignment from the college or school level to the broader institution level? Sometimes they may be at different places, and oftentimes the health professions, schools will actually help guide the broader institutional efforts around AI. So where are you in that specifically to that? It may certainly vary. Are there concerns about learner readiness, equity, big questions around responsible use? And then the infrastructure. Is the infrastructure there for the different types of AI that's being implemented? Everyone's not just using LLMs and generative AI. You have folks like myself who use machine learning, computer vision. So some are doing robotics. So there are different areas that would need that support and that infrastructure. And then a big one that we're talking about globally is evaluation capacity. How do you actually evaluate not only the AI models, but also the AI systems that are being used? So this moment in times demand a strategic response. So I want to talk about the fact that the pace of AI technology has accelerated, right? So it's important to know that AI capabilities are actually advancing much faster than we're able to track. And so that can be concerning when we are, as institutions, are drafting governance documents, but then the language in the documents may not capture accurately what happens in the next season when a new model is released or a new capability comes on the market, or it may be a technology with a more advanced capability. It oftentimes will lead to governance documents and guidance documents that are outdated. So how do we keep up with both? The tools are much different. Everyone on here knows that they're much different than they were just a few short years ago. And faculty and learners are adopting AI again, regardless of whether policy exists. So oftentimes, I'll hear as I'm meeting with different stakeholders and leaders across academic medicine, they'll say, well, we're developing, we're integrating AI into the curriculum. But it's just so important to know that AI integration is not just about the curriculum. It's actually an ecosystem. So you have to think about things like not just the academic programs, but also the clinical training environments, governance, professional practice. So individual faculty innovation is very, very valuable, but it's not sufficient to drive what we're doing in the AI within your AI ecosystem. It's just not enough. So you do need that institutional infrastructure. Pilots are great. So we have a lot of institutions that are piloting AI models and even systems, but that's just not enough. We have to think about successful adoption, integration, as well as scaling. So all of those things need to be thought of upfront. And then the stakes are high, oftentimes because academic health professions institutions, not just medical schools, but health professions in general, they think specifically about curriculum or even assessment, which is wonderful. They may think about operational readiness with or administrative use of AI tools. But the one thing that often isn't thought about are the clinical environments. And so the students, of course, are graduating. They're going into AI enabled or AI supported clinical environments, and they may not be prepared. But one of the things to think about also is yes, a student may be taught in the classroom about AI, maybe helping them understand the different use cases for AI, how AI is used, maybe in clinical settings, but are the students prepared to actually handle AI supported tools or AI enabled tools? And then if they are taught those things, then does that responsibility, once students are on clerkships, for example, do the that does that responsibility for appropriate use now fall to the health system that is training that student, or is it still the responsibility of the academic institution? So those are the types of things that we have to think about. Many institutions now are moving towards AI, thinking about competencies and things of that sort, but the clinical readiness piece is going to be very, very important to think about. So, moving from pilot to strategy is not easy. We definitely understand that. Um, Distributed innovation without coordination is very, very difficult. Sometimes you'll have the innovation, you'll have faculty champions, things, to move AI along will emerge organically, but you still have to have the infrastructure there. Right. So oftentimes there can be frustration with faculty who are trying to innovate. They're trying to incorporate AI, but it is actually, they don't necessarily have that infrastructure that's necessary for them to build and scale. Um, we very commonly see that policy will chase technology. Technology is being implemented and adopted, and then institutional policy is kind of after the fact. And that is obviously not ideal. Faculty are everywhere in their preparedness for AI. Some I've even heard faculty have not yet even used ChatGPT. They've never used it, are not sure if they want to use it, whether for professional or personal use. So we can't be under the assumption that all faculty have at least tried a generative AI tool, because that is actually not the case. And I did speak with an ophthalmologist a couple of weeks ago who said that she had never used ChatGPT, even never used any kind of generative AI tool. So we have to understand that people are at different places. So we need support at the institution level for beginners, but also for advanced users. And again, not just in a generative AI or LLM space, but also across different AI applications. Learners, very, very important part of the conversation. Learners have a voice that oftentimes is absent, and learners should be included in the conversations around it. Learners are very advanced. A lot of them even know more about faculty, and I'll mention that, in a later slide, you'll see that. But they actually sometimes know more than the faculty and staff about AI use. And so incorporating their perspectives, their concerns are very important when you're trying to develop strategies and policies around use. Learners have a lot of great ideas. I actually challenge learners, if we have an AI tool, try to break it, if you will, because they're very, very smart. They're witty. They've been around technology often their entire lives. And so they really do understand how to kind of dig deep and figure out if there are issues there. So I would encourage you to incorporate or invite learners to be a part of that experience. Bring in, perhaps if you have an educational technology committee, invite learners to participate. And of course, accountability without support is an issue. The expectations for AI integration often emerge before the faculty development and support systems are in place. So we have to definitely make sure that faculty know if they who they're accountable to and what they're accountable for when they're using AI. So to give faculty expectations around AI use, particularly for those who aren't yet comfortable with AI, and yet there's no accountability, of course, that's going to be an issue. So expect faculty or you can definitely have faculty use and adopt these tools, but to give them expectations without clear guidance and without accountability is problematic. So here's the four dimensions of AI readiness in health professions education, and we'll go through each of these individually. First is leadership and vision. Does your institution have a coherent, communicated AI vision, and how to, think about leadership being aligned and accountable? policy and governance, thinking about durable frameworks and who's accountable for AI decisions. Faculty development, is there infrastructure to develop the faculty capacity? Is faculty development continuous rather than just a one-time training event? And then learner readiness. Are learners truly prepared for AI in practice? And is AI integration equitable across different learner populations? So, starting with dimension one, some indicators of readiness for leadership and vision. It is very important to have a clearly articulated and communicated AI vision. That vision should align with the institution's mission. What I've seen before when talking to colleagues across different institutions is there may be an AI policy or there's a vision for AI, but faculty may not be clear where it lives. Where does the policy live? Is it a policy only for faculty? Is it policy for faculty and staff? Because staff members use non-faculty staff members use AI as well. Does that policy capture their use of AI? Is there one general document for administrators, AI administrators versus AI faculty? So there's so many different things to think about, but having a clearly articulated and communicated vision is very, very important. Senior leaders, can the senior leaders articulate AI priorities and who's accountable for implementation, right? I had a colleague, I mentioned something that she said because it's so important. She's now a leader in academic medicine, and she was formerly overseeing a health system. And she had mentioned, who's going to go to court with the AI? That's kind of the question that you have to ask. So can your senior leaders articulate what the priorities are for AI, but then also who's going to be responsible and accountable? AI strategy should be connected to accreditation, workforce preparation, and institutional values. Again, who's overseeing that? Do you have someone or maybe a few people that can help integrate AI strategies into these different areas? Having a designated owner is very important, not just a committee. If you do have an educational technology committee, oftentimes they're kind of deemed responsible for AI integration and decisions and AI policy development. However, the chair of that committee might not be the best person to be serve as the owner of AI. So having a conversation across your institution as to who actually owns it, who's responsible for it. And we're seeing now a lot of institutions are starting to hire AI, like chief AI officers to help with exactly this. Um, and then regular leadership level review of AI initiatives with the proper authority to act. So, who acts on the behalf of the institution? So, here are some diagnostic questions that your institution can use to try to see where you are in this. Are you actually prepared when it comes to AI leadership and AI vision? And we will share these slides with you, so no worries about that. So, policy and governance, when it comes to adopting durable frameworks, just as a reminder, you're not in this alone. You don't have to start from ground zero. There are frameworks available, and I'll show you, I'll discuss one that you may be familiar with after this slide. But when we're thinking about building or developing frameworks for AI, we have to make sure we develop them, or whether you're adopting an existing framework or you're building your own, we have to think about the fact that the framework needs to be useful even when tools evolve, right? So we shouldn't write the frameworks where they're so rigid that they're tied around a particular tool. Okay. It should be written general enough that if the tools get more advanced, if OpenAI and Microsoft and Anthropic, if their tools go away, our frameworks are still relevant. And so that's very important. And so, some things to think about first with academic integrity, your policies need to address AI use across assessment types, but there needs to be flexibility. One size fits all does not allow for good compliance, right? We know that things are going to vary. Students are learning different topics, whether like what I teach when I am covering biostatistics or epidemiology lectures will look quite different from someone who's doing covering clinical content, right? And if we're both incorporating AI, what it looks like could differ. So the assessment may, of course, look different. Um, and discipline specific guidance is best. And I really encourage experts to align and work with other experts who have come from similar backgrounds at other institutions because you learn so much from different people, right? Everyone has different experiences. They go to different conferences oftentimes. And so you get to learn with and from each other. And I really encourage that. Equity and access, the tools, of course, are not neutral. Policies must address differentials across learning populations, which I kind of mentioned before. Everyone's at different levels, even within the student body. And AI content needs to, of course, not reflect any existing biases. So very important, the equity and access needs to be there. You will have learners, if you query your learners, which many of you have, the learners will tell you there's some that are just absolutely uncomfortable with AI. And there are other learners who are very excited and actually requesting that AI is integrated more heavily into the curriculum. And so you're going to have learners at both ends of the spectrum, and we have to be prepared for that. Governance structure, we already mentioned who approves new tools. What if issues or disputes arise? Do your faculty and staff and learners, do they know who to go to? Who monitors compliance and updates policies? Governance, of course, is risk-based, so we may have to make sure that we're prepared for anything that comes along with that. Not all AI, of course, requires the same level of oversight. If you have clinical data or if you're using student data, then that's going to require, of course, more oversight than maybe someone using it to just do a search, perhaps for to help inform their research efforts or like a literature review search or something along those lines. Um, Data and privacy, what patient, student, and institutional data can be added to AI tools. There should be some guidance around that. Which tools are approved? Different institutions will have different approval processes. Sometimes the university level may approve certain uses, but the medical school or the veterinary school or whatever the health profession school, they may actually limit the tool use. So it's very important that your faculty understand that. And then, if there is a new tool that is adopted, who reviews it before deployment? Will it be deployed in a cloud environment or on premise? Oftentimes, that is not thought about. And it's very important to work with even your IT teams to get guidance on what is the best use of the tool, because sometimes you can do different things with different tools. It could be cloud-based or on-prem. Very important to have those discussions before it is fully deployed and faculty are using it. Well, not faculty and staff and students as well. There should be policies for learner AI use as well as corresponding guidance for faculty and staff. If there's not, it can create a lot of confusion. Some institutions will have one, particularly early on, they'll have one policy that's kind of touching on different things, and it's for all of the users, whether it's a student, faculty, or staff. That may suffice initially, but as you learn more about the tools that are being used, the different use cases and applications across your institution, you may need to have different policies. So think about that. May not be, again, a one size fits all. Perhaps it could be early on, but that may need to be changed over time. And then review cadence. Of course, AI policies should be included in scheduled reviews. Without review, the policies can become quickly outdated. So we have to make sure that we're overseeing that. Not only the fact that it's being reviewed, but also who's responsible for making sure that the policy is revisited. And so, particularly as risks involve, as sometimes our institutional missions may kind of vary or change over time, how does that impact the actual policies that are there? So this is what I mentioned. Someone will put in the chat box a link to for you to view this educational framework. So there has been, of course, increasing recognition that AI integration in medical education is critical. And so their AAMC has worked very hard to start to think about integration, so frameworks, AI frameworks at both the learner level, the faculty level, but then also at the GME level as well. So I encourage you to take a look. There's a link at the bottom, but you can, of course, access the link in the chat. But you can start looking at how AI is integrated across different domains and from different perspectives. And so, even going from not just internally looking within the institution or just at the individual, but also thinking about a macro or mega level as well. So, there are a lot of institutions that are starting to work very closely with industry stakeholders to kind of refine their AI strategies, which is very powerful. So, I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you like to, and please feel free to reach out to Medbiquitous, the standards arm of AAMC. You can contact them if you like or have questions, or even feedback perhaps. Or you can contact me. I'm actually a member of the IACAI. It's an international committee for AI. I'd be happy to take some feedback or questions back to the group for consideration. Um, faculty development. One of the things that often I'll hear people say is that, well, we have a workshop. And so we're really prepared because we offer a workshop, maybe one or two workshops every year on AI. But I want to emphasize that a workshop is not a strategy. Faculty development must be continuous, contextualized, and structurally supported. It's very important. So here are three types of faculty development or three stages of faculty development you can think about. So foundational may be all faculty, what AI is and is not, how it works conceptually, if there are any institutional policies and expectations, and then where to get support when questions or issues arise. They will arise. It's not a matter of if, it's when they will arise. So that what just having foundational faculty development sessions is ideal, helping the faculty understand just some of the key elements for AI implementation. Then you may have applied faculty development training for faculty maybe who are redesigning their courses or they're designing assessments with AI. Maybe perhaps some things you might cover in that is discipline-specific AI applications, course level assessment strategies for redesign. What are some tools that they may use that are relevant to their area? Particularly, faculty may serve in different capacities. You have some that are on curriculum committees, you have some that are on assessment committees, and they're really curious how they can integrate AI into what they're doing, not just in a classroom as they're instructing students or facilitating learning, as we like to say, but also how they're using it in their committee work. There's a lot of interest there. And then, of course, discipline specific practice. So, helping faculty understand within their relative areas how they can actually integrate, how is AI being integrated, and what might they be able to do within their role at the institution. Then the advanced level might be providing training, writing strategies and tactics around faculty who are leading AI curricula, who are leading the development of AI policies or AI research. And so that could include curriculum design for AI competencies, of course, policy advising, having or allowing. Not maybe not allowing, but supporting them working with other institutions to actually glean insights from what they've implemented successfully elsewhere, and they maybe could perhaps bring back to their institutions. Um, and then what leading departmental AI initiatives look like, what is involved in that? If you're using AI for research and scholarship in the health professions education, what does that actually look like? So those are some really great topics for faculty who perhaps are a bit more advanced and leading efforts. Learner readiness is huge. We've kind of touched on this already, but we have to make sure that we're preparing our graduates for AI-enabled practice. Learners need AI literacy. We're not training them to be, of course, data scientists or AI engineers, But we need them to understand not just tool use, but actually how to critically evaluate the outputs that they get from those tools. And the evaluation has to be relative to the clinical context they're in, so it can't be separated. So it's very important that you have different opportunities for students to understand how clinical AI is not just clinical AI. It depends on what area they're in clinically, but then also how it's being used at the institutions that they will eventually go to train after they're done with their with the well, in the case of academic medicine at the UME level, what they can expect and how it may be used at the GME level. There needs to be clear guidance on appropriate AI use in their program, not just ambiguous policies. We want to refrain from having policies that are written just because we need one. They need to be clear, they need to be specific. There are a lot of leaders in academic medicine, for example, who have wonderful policies and they're happy to share them across institutions. So please reach out. And I encourage you to learn from others, and it can give you a starting place. Um, AI goes wrong, it happens, but what do you do when it does occur? When do you recognize it? Who do you report it to? That becomes even more important when students are in a clinical setting. So students should be comfortable with understanding that the use of AI, something may not work, or it may be problematic, or something that needs to be reported, and having them feel comfortable with reporting that there was an AI failure. That's going to be key. Um, Ethical reasoning practice. What are the responsibilities of a clinician who uses AI? Students need to understand as I transition from learner to an actual practitioner. What does that look like? What do my responsibilities look like? Are they similar? Are they different? Students need to think about that. And then equitable access. Again, we already mentioned this, but not all learners have equal experience with or access to AI tools. Institutions often will miss the fact that the students are sometimes more AI capable than we as faculty. They have great ideas, and so we need to hear more from them as we develop our strategies. AI policies written for learners without learner input is problematic. So we want to make sure that we incorporate learners into the conversation. Competency frameworks may not include AI specific outcomes. So sometimes the graduates are actually not sure whether they're fully prepared and ready for AI. So there may be some concerns going into the residency that they may not be ready, maybe as much so as peers at other institutions. And assessment design may have not kept pace. Many programs still think of AI around, they're wrapping their heads around AI as an integrity issue. Students are using it to cheat rather than thinking of it as a competency that may help students as they move forward in their practice. So, as you think about this, it's just a reflection question. The four dimensions that we covered, which one might be the weakest for your institution at this point? And as you identify it, what would it take to actually move forward? And so oftentimes that can be a little daunting to think, well, I have to figure out where we're weakest at, but actually that could be the beginning of a great strategy. So I encourage you to think about it, maybe work with your senior leaders to think about where are we really, do we really need assistance with, and then start developing a strategy. And don't forget, you're not alone. Reach out and work with us. There's a lot. AI has really opened doors, not just across campus, but across institutions where we're working together to help support one another. So please feel free to reach out. There are a lot of pilots out there. I kind of mentioned that briefly before, but pilots don't in and of themselves become strategies. Some common failure modes, you'll oftentimes have a single champion. One person developed a beautiful AI program, and that person left, and everything kind of falls apart, right? There was no documentation. There's the one owner, and that information was not shared maybe more broadly with others. And so it when that person exits, all is lost with AI, and it kind of sets an institution back significantly. So we absolutely don't want that. Um, Leading with prohibition rather than vision can be an issue. Some institutions are kind of telling faculty you're not permitted to use AI. That is not the best idea because, as we mentioned, People are still using it, whether the institution says so or not. Prohibition is not a strategy. It's just basically a holding pattern. But eventually, you will have to create an environment where faculty are supported in their use. Faculty and staff are supported in their use of AI. Um, a completed workshop, finished document, launch pilot is not integration. When we think about integration, we have to think about the system. We have to think about change and how teaching and learning occurs, as well as some of administrative responsibilities, and everything will look different. So you can see how complex. This is why we talk about ecosystems and just systems in general, right? It's people, policies, and technology all together, and that's that leads to very complex scenarios. Um, Announcing an AI strategy without funding, protected time, or personnel, that can be very overwhelming to faculty because there may be this expectation that you need to incorporate AI, and the faculty may feel like it's an add-on instead of it being something that perhaps can help them further their work or their efforts. It could just feel like a weight. And so we want to make sure that there's some kind of resources that come along with AI strategy. And AI tools don't perform equally across populations. So having reviewed the reviewing risks associated with AI is going to be imperative. So we want to build policies that work. We want principles over rules. So we want the policies and guidance documents to be transparent. Learners, faculty should understand how and when AI is used. AI should not always be used. So I try to encourage that. Sometimes people are excited about AI, but it's actually not the best. It may not be the best tool to use for different scenarios or for different situations. So it's very important that we want to use AI responsibly. Of course, with the resources, the taxing on resources that AI causes. So we want to make sure that we only use AI when it's necessary. Proportionality, the level of restriction or guidance applied to AI use should be proportional to the stakes involved. And of course, if we have low stakes reflection, that will look completely different than high stakes, right? So we have to make sure that when we write these guidance documents or policies, it's proportional to how AI is being used at your institution, which is why it's very important if you're responsible for developing AI policies that you understand across all faculty how is AI being used. Policy should be built with explicit review cycles. We mentioned that. It's not whether your AI policy will need updating. It will. Eventually, it will. You have to make sure that it is updated before it potentially causes harm, right? Because as the new technologies evolve, there's a lot of conversations and excitement around it. And so faculty, staff, and learners are eager to use it. And unfortunately, if there are no policies or guidance in place, it could be problematic, of course. Um, Policy should account for differential impacts across learner populations. Want to emphasize that. We don't want technically neutral policy because that could lead to inequitable outcomes. And every element of a policy should have a named owner responsible for implementation, monitoring, and updating. And again, if you are at an early stage of AI adoption and implementation, perhaps you have a policy that's owned by a committee. But we encourage you that as you grow and as you refine your policies and guidance documents, that you actually identify someone who can help serve as provide ownership over each element. So with governance, who decides, who oversees, and who acts? These are just some questions as you think about effective AI governance. Who approves your tools? Who resolves disputes? Who can grant exceptions? Who represents the institution publicly or in regulatory settings when it comes to AI? Who tracks which tools are in use across the institution? Who reports incidents or who reviews the reporting of incidents? Who keeps the policy inventory current? There are just so many questions here that you should consider. And many institutions, although they may have a policy, they don't necessarily have that person who will respond. They're not exactly sure who might respond to different aspects of the policy. So these are just some questions that you can actually think about. So, thinking about your next steps, no matter where you start, this isn't a linear checklist, but it's just something that you can actually start to think about. Perhaps first starting with diagnosing. There are readiness audits out of and available. There are AI readiness audits. You can inventory existing AI initiative at your institution, who's doing what, where, and with what support. But then also not just containing that information within senior leader. Maybe they're having conversations around the who, the what, and the where. But then they also communicating that information to faculty so that faculty will know who perhaps they can go to for guidance or for collaboration, even within your institution. And also identifying any current governance gaps, very important. Subsequently, you can align. So, in securing leadership alignment on a shared AI vision, very important to make sure that your leadership is on board with what you're trying to do. We already talked quite a bit about establishing owners, not just the committee, which is great, but also having people, an individual person overseeing certain aspects. And then engaging faculty and learner voices before you draft any policies. Again, oftentimes learners are not included in those conversations when it comes to drafting policies, but we want to include the students. Build as you start building, developing principle-based policy with the review cycles that we talked about, launching faculty development infrastructures. It should be tiered depending on the level at which the faculty are at. Integrating competencies perhaps into existing competency frameworks that can be a little bit easier for the institutions to do because those frameworks are already there. But then maybe how do you build the AI pieces into it? And then subsequently replicating what's worked, using pilot learning deliberately, building equity monitoring into your decisions as you decide to scale, and then review and adjust and communicate, very important, progress to the institution. And so some of these, sometimes it's not necessarily linear because you may go back and forth. You may, as people change institutions or as you have new folks come into your institutions, perhaps you'll go back to working on the governance ownership. And so you might go kind of back and forth between these. But as faculty, you hire new faculty, may have a new faculty that's coming in that maybe no one in your entire institution has used agentic AI, for example. You have a new faculty member who comes in who builds agentic AI systems. So you might need to go back and then actually see if you're ready and prepare to host agentic AI systems within your institution. So you might be at the scale stage, but then you may have to go back to figure out if you're ready for certain aspects or certain applications of AI, depending on who you have on the faculty. So just some key takeaways before we open it up for Q&A, what to take back to your institution. AI integration is an institutional design problem. Faculty enthusiasm is great, but you have to have the infrastructure, you have to have ownership, you have to have the resources to really fully integrate AI. Readiness, we talked about the four dimensions of readiness. Weakness in one area could be problematic. So you want to make sure everything is established together. And then as you advance in technologies, you adopt new technologies, et cetera, then those should actually evolve together. Very important. Build principles, we talked about that, not just rules. You want the policies tied to specific tools. You don't want the policies tied to specific tools because it can quickly become outdated. So we want them general enough where it's durable, the frameworks that you adopt, and some of the existing frameworks that are out there that you may consider, they are actually being revised, they're being revisited. So you don't want any static frameworks. You want something that has the flexibility to evolve over time. Name your owners. You need to know who's accountable. Everyone owns it. No one owns it, right? So someone needs to be responsible for each component of your AI governance and documents, but also any initiatives that you're launching. And again, include the learner voice. It definitely will improve your strategies. And so we want to make sure that we bring students in and also give students an understanding of how they need to think about AI as they leave our institutions, which they will, how they leave our institutions and go into the clinical environments where they will practice. Okay, so thank you. And I think we're going to open it up for questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Fairclough. That was fascinating. And I definitely must say it's such a wonderful and easy to follow presentation that it allows one to create a full mind map of everything that you said. And I must say, behind the scenes, the chat and the questions have been popping around a lot. So people have been very engaged and it's been wonderful. So we have a lot of questions, and I'm really hoping
Wonderful.
we can go through as many as we can together.
Okay, thank
So
you.
there is one that asks how to act on AI integration for new institution that is still figuring out their mission and vision. And do you have any tools or recommendations for apps or tools to use?
Sure. So AI, so institutions that are the institutions is their mission and vision clear in general? Now, aside from AI, is the vision and mission of the institution clear and firm? Or are they actually considering evolving their mission as they are trying to also come up with their AI vision?
Yes, so I think that the way the question is phrased, it means that
Mhm.
they're writing out their mission and vision for the institution as they go, but they want to do
Okay.
integration. Yes.
Yes. So I think the key thing is one, just understanding what's the general mission of your institution, period. Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? What do we want our learners to be capable of as they graduate? Right. So that's going to be key. And then how will AI help us do that work? Right. How will AI prepare our students to maybe take better care of patients, or how can they be better communicators? Whatever the vision is for your institution, try to think of AI and how AI may help you to move forward your vision and your mission. Not necessarily thinking of how can we implement AI simply because everyone's using it and we need to use it as well, or are excited about it, but actually trying to map it back to the mission. Right. And that will guide you. And sometimes institutions, depending on their mission, may not need every application of AI. Perhaps there is no need to have policies around computer vision or some robotics because that doesn't align with the mission of your institution, your particular medical school or dental school or health professions school. It just may not align. So perhaps you don't need that. You only have maybe one aspect or one major use case for AI, and that's perfectly fine as long as it aligns. That's the key. It's going to be that alignment. I would encourage to take a look at some of those readiness assessment, and I can send links. We're going to provide links as well afterwards, resources. I can provide links to some general documents that could help think about, like, okay, we're starting out. What do we need to think about as we try to think alignment, as we try to think strategy? We're very early adopters. What do we do? We are not even sure the questions to ask. We can provide some links to those to give you kind of a frame of reference and some thoughts around it.
Thank you very much. And we'll make sure to include all of the links that you
Mhm.
provide with us to a newsletter later to everyone who's participating here today. So, another question is, do you know of any leadership training for medical schools for using AI in medical education? If there's anything.
Great. Yes. There are quite a few, and this will depend, and this is why understanding who and how AI will be used, who's the person asking a question, right? So you may have a faculty member who wants to learn how to use AI within their institution. It's only for their own use case. They're trying to work on maybe developing better test questions or better, prompts for maybe like short answer responses or more, perhaps they're doing, PBL or some kind of a, they're using it in some way that's very specific for what they do. Those training opportunities might look different from a faculty member who is overseeing assessment. And now they need to think of a strategy for AI and how do we implement it and incorporate it into assessing student performance, right? So those can look quite different. So even though it's a faculty member, their role will determine what kind of training they need. There are a number of institutions out there that are available, and so, for example, and not saying that you have to take a particular course, but I'm one of the faculty facilitators for courses at Harvard Medical School where they do have health professions education, AI technology, different programs for different, faculty, like their different needs. So some may be more for so on assessment, some may be just for faculty individually, some may be more on curriculum design, but there are a lot out there what I would recommend is that the individual kind of does a search for what is needed. Do I need something for my own faculty role individually, or am I maybe the lead of an AI committee or educational technology committee, and I need to be able to basically train my the faculty I work with, or maybe the staff. I need to be able to train them on AI. Those workshops, those trainings are going to be completely different. So there's so many out there. If you want more technical, if you want more just educational, there are 2 week programs, there are 8 month programs. It's just there's just a significant number, and I'd be happy to, if someone wanted to reach out to me, I'd be happy to chat about what may be best depending on their specific need.
Yep. Thank you very much. So there's many questions coming in asking about any potential tools and any potential free tools that you would recommend to start using for faculty members that just about begin with an AI revolution at their institution. And I think this aligns very well with the discussions around equity that you had in the presentation as
Mhm.
well. So do you have any recommendations for people?
Yes, the nice part about AI is that the technology now, everyone is able to get free accounts, right? So the free accounts may be limited. So whether you get OpenAI with ChatGPT solution, or Anthropic, Claude, or Microsoft Copilot, there are so many that are available for faculty to start using. And one of the things that I tell faculty to do is just kind of like just play around with the tool. Never use student data, obviously never use clinical data. So I wouldn't recommend that, because the back end protections are going to vary. So you'll have to get an understanding from your IT department on what kind of, if your institution does allow Copilot, for example, what am I allowed to use, right? It's stored in a cloud? Is it going to train on the data that I share? So you have to be extremely, extremely, extremely careful on what you actually give to the AI as you communicate. So that's going to be key. But then once you understand the limitation, the restraints, the constraints, definitely you want to kind of play around with it. And what I tell faculty is I say, hey, you can actually ask whether you use GPT or whatever, you can actually ask it to, I teach biostatistics. Can you create a synthetic data set for me? I want it in Excel format. I want it to have, three 3,000 students or 500 students, whatever you want, you can ask it. And I want it to have, column that reflects how students performed on 2 exams and how they performed on maybe, I don't know, pre-college statistics courses, like whatever it is that you're interested in, you can actually have the tool develop a synthetic data set. And from that, you can actually start asking it like, okay, if I had this CSV file, how could I analyze it? How can I use generative AI to help me understand even quantitative data? Because a lot of times people miss the fact that generative AI tools are fantastic for understanding and analyzing quantitative data. They can do amazing things. And if anyone's interested in an example I can provide afterwards, just send me an email. I'd be happy to share it. But I actually had GPT in 20 prompts, right? With refining, I had it build a beautiful synthetic data set, and it actually modeled it. And I was able to see clusters. It actually drew it out, and I could see clusters and rotate the cluster of students who maybe would pass or fail the biostat section of a step exam. So you can actually do that with quantitative data, and very few people realize that, because they understand generative AI, LLMs, it's all about qualitative data, words and text. No, you actually can do so much more. So now, you really can dream big now. You can dream big. You can start with free tools, because I know every institution does not even have accounts for faculty and staff. Some institutions don't, but that's okay. You can actually start with what's free and just start building and thinking of and asking the AI, how can I use AI to inform the work? This is my area. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And then go to conferences, work with colleagues to understand how they're using it at their different institutions.
Yes, thank you very much. I've never actually thought about asking it to form quantitative data sets so that, you can even start practicing on them or you can start educating with them. That is fascinating. Thank you
Exactly.
very much. So the next question is, what's one aspect of AI integration that institutions tend to focus on very early in one area they often neglect until much later?
I would say that what they start. thinking about very early is the what how they're using AI, but more so in a very like, tight lens. So the thought is, how are people using generative AI? That's typically where people start, which is a great question. But then those of us who also are doing machine learning, computer vision, like we're kind of like, if you write a policy that's tied around generative AI, you may or may not capture what we're doing in other areas of AI, right? Because generative AI, LLMs, there may be specific language around those policies. So understanding how, so they'll get an understanding of how it's being used, but maybe not broadly enough. So that one actually, that answer kind of touches on both. They'll ask the right questions around generative AI. Everyone's excited. Everyone's familiar with it. That's the key. But then when it comes to the other areas, they just don't even know what to ask about it. So I would even encourage those of us who are doing those to actually communicate with the leaders of the Educational Technology Committee or whoever this is the AI champion at your institution to inform them on this is how I use AI. It looks different from generative AI, and here's how, so that they can be informed. So it's not that the individual responsible needs to go out and try to get information from everyone. It could be put the onus on us to respond to them and say, hey, by the way, this policy that we're reviewing, it looks like in my area isn't really captured. Here's perhaps how I can help inform, provide some guidance around that. And then the other thing that I mentioned quite a bit is a learner voice. The learners are just not often included in this area, and they really should be. That usually doesn't come along often at all. And so we're encouraging people to think about the learners.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. So we are kind of coming up at the hour, but I will try
Yes.
to squeeze in two more questions because they're floating around and people are asking them. So one is, what capabilities do you think institutions should prioritize building now, regardless of how rapidly AI tools continue to evolve?
I think helping the faculty to understand what AI is, and everyone has a general understand, like general, like okay, a broad umbrella idea, but what it actually is, everything kind of starts to look different. You'll have some faculty members who they know AI very well. Perhaps they have an engineering or a very technical background, so they understand the ins and outs of it. And you have some faculty, they have no idea what machine learning is, never heard of it. And so I think the important part is going to be making sure everyone has an understanding of what is AI, what are the different aspects of AI. If you're doing, one area, it doesn't mean that you're not doing another area because oftentimes you'll have like AI, then under AI is machine learning, under machine learning is deep learning, and people don't necessarily know the connections. And so I think making sure all the faculty very early understand what is AI and then maybe providing some use cases of it. That's going to be a very easy early thing that everyone can do to make sure people are on the same page. And once faculty start to understand, like, oh, that's an interesting area. I didn't realize that was there, or I didn't, I didn't, I think this would be fantastic for my area. It actually opens up opportunities for them. And now with all the cross-institution collaborations that we're doing now, things look different. So it's easy to collaborate and not just across medicine, academic medicine, but I'm collaborating with someone from veterinary medicine on a project. And so we're now talking across disciplines. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's wonderful. So I would say that's probably very early on what institutions can do right away.
Yes, thank you very much. So that ties beautifully into the next question we have in the chat. So it says that, do you have any tips and tricks on how to manage when your school doesn't, has an abundance of faculty and staff where everyone wears multiple hats, sometimes three and four, including sometimes full-time clinical work? How do we make sure that everybody's experiences and opinions will be included and everyone will be trained well for this?
This, and you can even with that question, that's a beautiful question, but you can even see how that is a big role, right? Which is why many institutions are now starting to adopt someone or give faculty some time to actually serve as kind of an AI leader, whether they have a chief level or director level title or not, they're actually giving someone the time to do that because it takes a lot to understand where faculty are, their comfort levels, what they like to know about AI, and then developing strategies, developing workshops, developing programs around that. It's a tremendous amount of work. And so I think the key is for your institutions to actually start to think about what do my faculty, how are they currently using AI? If anyone's using it at all, how are they currently using it? How do they anticipate using it in the near future, right? Because people have ideas as they're going to conferences, they're coming back with ideas and they're excited about it. So how do we move forward and help them to implement these new ideas and what's needed to do that? It could be workshops, perhaps folks need to be trained. So it may be a matter of sending or faculty, which requires resources, I know, but sending your faculty and staff to actually train to be able to take on new AI use cases or new AI applications, but then also empowering them to come back and maybe training the faculty. So that actually can be a quite powerful move if you perhaps you pay for someone to go to a workshop and that person comes back and then teaches the rest of your faculty how to implement that new technology. That can be a very, very good thing to do. But it really takes leaders to start thinking of AI is such a huge, again, we use the word ecosystem, right? It sounds huge because it is. We have to have someone who is tasked to take on that job or that role, and then they can help develop strategies because it's just such a big lift. Having faculty just kind of trying to figure out on their own doesn't work, and then having someone just kind of an extra add-on, like you're now tasked to oversee AI, it just doesn't work, right? We have to have the time, the resources, the infrastructure, which is why there has to be buy-in from your leadership. Your senior leaders have to buy into AI.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So there's one final question that
Sure.
came through, and it's a little more philosophical, I would say, because I do think that a lot of people sometimes tend to be scared of what the future might hold because we talk about efficiency and we talk about even job losses because of AI. So it says if AI replaces humans, what the future would look like. How do we mitigate some of these risks? And is there a risk for something like that happening?
That's a great question. I love that question. We're finding, and I think now even in the tech world, like we don't anticipate AI will replace humans. Um, AI is being developed and should be developed. This is why you need governance people. So the regulatory experts there at your institution, they are so important to get involved in a conversation. Your ethicists, they need to be involved in a conversation. AI should not be designed to replace humans. It should be used to support the work of humans. And because every time, so far, what we've seen is when AI tries to replace humans, something goes wrong. Humans have to be in the loop. And in some instances, you're hearing humans on the loop. Humans have to know what's happening because AI does not have the capacity to make decisions the way we do. And AI, we can learn something, we can kind of make inferences on something that we're not trained on. We can just kind of glean insights and make decisions. The AI knows what it was trained on, and that's it. And if it wasn't accurately trained or well trained, which does happen, the AI may not be trained well enough. It cannot pivot. It's not flexible enough because I'm saying it didn't know what it didn't know. There was no way it would know or anticipate. And so that's why sometimes if you even see a robot and the robot was not trained to recognize changes, the robot will stop because it doesn't know what to do next, right? Or it'll spin around, and we're seeing some cases where the even the cars, the AI driven cars, automated cars, are like going in circles because they just don't know how to fix the problem. So we don't anticipate AI replacing humans. Humans would need to understand AI and integrate AI because the work is being done faster. People are more efficient, right? So you talked about efficiency, but we don't anticipate it will replace humans at all. So I don't think that's a concern. It used to be something talked about a while ago, but especially in clinical care, we don't anticipate that happening.
Thank you very much. So, we've had the Q&A session, and I will show you the tools. And what they look like right now. But after everything, if you want to learn more about Lecturio's platform features, please feel free to scan that QR code that you see over there and ask for a very specific demo where you can see what AI tools and more our platform and platforms are containing. Outside of that, Lecturio has acquired Simtix. So it's Simtix by Lecturio, where you could have and use simulation on any device. There's even AI features within this simulation devices over here. So there's over 200 interactive simulations of real clinical procedures, and it's self-paced, accessible anytime with no special equipment needed. If you want to learn more about Simtix, feel free to use the QR code, or again, just get in touch with any of us here at Lecturio. Lecturio also offers Healer for clinical reasoning. So this used to be NEJM Healer, now it's Lecturio's Healer, and you can scan the QR code and learn more about it. There's a free case that you can try yourselves or someone at your institution. You can share it with your learners, and we can also give you a nice demo on what Healer does. Now, before we finish up, I would like to show you some of our AI tools. And I know that some of you, this isn't the first time you're attending a Lecturio session, so I'm sure you've seen this. But if anyone else is more interested to learn about this, feel free to stay and we will show you what features we have and what these features look like in a second. So Lecturio currently has multiple AI features or AI tools that are embedded within our platform. So we have a lesson plan generator that is AI powered, a syllabus generator, question generator, and AI educator assistant. So I will quickly run through these. And if this is your first time seeing these, I hope you will be as impressed as I was the first time when I saw them as an educator myself. So let's start with the syllabus generator, where you can use this to create an entire syllabus in a matter of minutes. Apologies, I left this go quickly. There you go. We are back to the syllabus generator. So you could create different syllabi based on the program that you're teaching, and you can even go into generic. Let's go as an MD because that is what I am, and it's easiest, I think, to navigate. Let's do a second year. You could use different standards. So you can use the LCME, WFME Global. It depends. Osteopathic, even. I'll go with WFME, given that I'm from North Macedonia. You can choose your language here. And I think one of the beauties of AI is that it can translate across languages way faster than we can. You can choose the subject. I use pathophysiology. And then you could see the delivery method. Let's say it's remote synchronous. And then the duration for your course. So let's say 16 weeks as a standard semester. The next step is AI is defining learning objectives based on the parameters I've given. Now, these learning objectives sometimes are predefined at your institution, or sometimes you do need AI to help you with them. You could be adding new learning objectives as you go. And this is very powerful because this will take your learning objectives into consideration when creating the final product. Something else you could do is if something doesn't add up or if something is not well aligned with your institution, you can delete it or you can edit this. Now, whatever you delete and edit is taken into consideration when generating a syllabus. And now the mistakes for this type of AI and the hallucinations all throughout Lecturio are minimal because it is taking everything from Lecturio. So it's a closed loop, and this won't be able to take or access any information that it can find online. So in here, we have the pathophysiology course for MDs. With the WFME standards, you have the learning objectives, you have weekly schedule here, and it's still working on it. So once you do this, you are able to start over, save PDF, download PDF, or even edit directly. So you could go here and you can add anything that you want to add in the process. Now, we're going to take one of the weeks. Let's take the immune system pathophysiology. I will copy this for a second because once we have our syllabus created, we might want to start creating lesson plans. Now, I've copied, just a second, administration. I have copied one of the plans that are needed. So now we'll go into the lesson plan generator, and the topic adds that week that we want to create a lesson plan for. I will keep to MD because this comes from there. The duration for this could be 45 minutes for this particular lesson. The delivery method could be remote synchronous. Essentially, that is what we mentioned. And you always have to confirm that you understand that this is AI and that will not enter personally identifiable information, something we did discuss today and something that Dr. Fairclough mentioned a few times. So we have learning objectives as well in here, and they're perfectly editable, and you can add new ones, remove any ones that you dislike or don't align with your institution, the same way that we did earlier. And then you generate the lesson plan. On the side of the lesson plan, we have our virtual AI assistant, Lexi, and you can ask Lexi to edit or to remove or to edit parts. So you're able to edit this yourselves as well, but if you need something major changed, you can always go with Lexi. What's really great here is that apart from having also the lesson structure for this, you have materials and resources needed. And more often than not, these materials and resources are also linking all of the lectures, all of the videos, all of the concept pages that our platform contains that are discussed in this lesson plan. And you can either assign this to your students, delete it, or just link it. You could ask Lexi, for example, please create a case report for this lesson. And when you do that, you chat, Lexi will add a case report and edit it, and it's going to be on the topic of immune system pathophysiology for second-year medical students according to the WFME global standards for medical education. So there's a lesson plan, and if you go further, you will see that the lesson plan has been edited to contain the case. Let me see. Teaching points. I should have asked to add it in here. So once you do, it's going to be added within, oh, there it is, case report, immune system pathophysiology. Um, I didn't ask it to add it, but I asked Lexi to rewrite it. So that is on me, but it can add it over there. Now, once you've done your syllabus and lesson plan generator, you could go into your AI educator assistant. And in here, you could ask for anything to be explained or any resources to be found. Now, the sources that this type of AI is using are also closed in a closed circuit. So it's either the library or medical content within Lecturio. So the opportunity for any hallucinations are minimal, or you could also use PubMed, or you can just use PubMed and say, I need library for biomedical literature to find something on the topic. So let's say if we write pathophysiology, immune system activation, not older than 5 years, for example, and I click, and this also goes with chatting. So you can go back and forth. You can ask for curated resources, explanations, lesson plan assistant outside of the lesson plan, even certain questions. This will find it. Now, obviously, the prompt that I wrote here is not really in depth, or it's not it's very vague and it's very general, but it's just an example. So you can find here the key mechanisms of immune activation. And at the end of it, you will also find some PubMed resources that talk about the topic. Again, the more specific you are within your prompt, the better resources that you will find on PubMed. Currently, I just found one that kind of falls into the parameters that, oh, there it is, another one, into the parameters that I just mentioned. And with time, it will find even more resources. But this links directly to PubMed, and it actually gives you certain references that then you can use and you can check out yourselves. And again, the hallucination is even smaller, given that it is a closed circuit. Now, after you've done all of this, after you've done the syllabus generator, lesson plan, and AI, you can also generate questions. So there's different exam types in here. So let's this time do something with nursing. Let's do NCLEX, for example. You can choose different topics. You can say mental health and pediatrics, for example, and you can add pharmacology. So you can add as many as you want from these subjects. You can look at body systems. So in this case, could be psychiatric, could be developmental, for example. And then NCLEX category, according to the NCLEX categories, let's go management of care, health promotion and maintenance, and it's good enough. So you can ask for scenario, you can ask for anything you want, and in here you get AI help to even write the prompt. So I will be purposefully vague and say, please create a question on mental health in pediatric nursing and make a management plan. So we confirm, we ask for explanations, We choose the language. You can also upload a file. So if you're using any standards at your institutions, you're more than welcome to upload the file here. Of course, if there's no identifiable information. And then the first step is to have our AI to generate these prompts. So there's a system prompt and there's a user prompt, and you are more than welcome to edit these, but they're also saving you time if this is very well aligned. And this is AI generated already. So we don't have much time to go through this, but in a different demo, we might. Now I'm generating questions. You can generate multiple questions at the same time, but I only opted out to go with one here so that I can save us some time. And then we have here a case. It's a 10-year-old child diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. So you have an entire case similar to what an NCLEX moderate type question would look like. You ask which management plans should the nurse prioritize to help the child cope effectively with anxiety at school. And you have certain questions, certain answers and distractors, and you get the right here, which is encourage consistent routines and provide relaxation techniques for the child. And then if we went with a hard question or just purely pharmacology, this could have gone differently. And here you have an explanation for the question. And next, you could export this question to an AI QBank, to any of the pre-existing QBanks, or create your own institution's questions that then you can use or you can download from Lecturio. So in essence, these are our AI tools. There's much more than AI tools for Lecturio, but if you're interested in that, please do get in touch with us and let us know. I want to thank everyone for staying near till the end of this demo as well and for attending our webinar. Please stay put because we have lots of more coming, and we are here at any time if anyone has any ideas, questions, or thoughts. I want to thank again Dr. Fairclough for this wonderful webinar, and we hope to have her again in the future. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and happy learning.